For the sake of the family, Daniele had urged, because family had meant everything to his twin. Sadly, a great deal less to Aristide. Suitable marital prospects were served up to Aristide at every family event he attended, and it had become seriously annoying. After all, his plan had always been to stay single until he was middle-aged. Only then would he marry to provide the next generation. He had no perfect candidate in mind, but then he didn't believe a perfect woman existed. He had, however, already considered the desirable attributes his wife should possess. She would have to be beautiful, wealthy in her own right, and of a maternal nature. That last trait was non-negotiable. Nobody knew better than Aristide what it had been like to grow up with a cold, cruel mother. "You're exhausted," Edith, Scarlett's mother-in-law, sighed in a sympathetic undertone in the church foyer, scanning the younger woman's shadowed eyes. "You are as well," Scarlett pointed out ruefully, as she acknowledged that the sudden, unexpected death of her husband, a year earlier, had ripped the heart out of the whole family circle. Luke had essentially died in a cycling accident on the way to work. Only the shell of him had lingered in a hospital bed for 2 long months afterwards. There had, however, been no real hope that he would emerge from his coma during those dreadful weeks, and eventually she and her in-laws had agreed for the machines keeping him alive to be switched off. He had been 24 years old, newly qualified as an accountant, and a much-loved only child, with everything to live for still ahead of him. And in the blink of an eye, he was now gone, and nothing could change that reality. Scarlett dragged in a ragged breath. She was empty of tears now. The weeks during which Luke had lain unresponsive in his hospital bed had drained her of the first sobbing desperation of grief. In addition, she was no stranger to family loss. Her adoptive parents had died soon after her marriage, one from a long-standing illness, the other from a massive stroke, brought on, she suspected, by the shock of bereavement. Becoming an adult orphan had made Scarlett even more grateful to have Luke and his parents in her corner. He had helped her build their family with 2 parents. Now, without Luke around to steady her, she felt as though the foundation of her world had collapsed, and she knew that she had to get over feeling that way because she still had 2 young children to raise. Just about the very last thing Scarlett was prepared to handle was the shocking vision of her ex, Aristide, striding up the path to the church door, where she and Luke's parents were greeting their friends. Impossibly elegant in a dark suit, so beautifully tailored it could only have hailed from an Italian designer, Aristide Angelico looked utterly untouched by the passage of time. Not that that surprised her, because she had learned the hard way that nothing much touched Aristide deep, and it had only been 2 years since she had last seen him. That 2 years for her, however, had been packed tight with her pregnancy, her marriage, the birth of her twins, and a new life darkened by the loss of Luke, but an utterly different life from what she had once had while she was with Aristide. Gleaming black curls that caught the sunlight and were a little too long for tidiness tumbled above a lean, stunningly handsome face. Aristide was a male who few women failed to notice. Scarlett could feel her knees weakening as though some insidious spell had entered her bloodstream the instant she saw him. It brought back bad memories of how lost she had once got in Aristide, of how vulnerable she had become in the grip of her fear of losing him. And that disturbing surge of recollection hit her at the exact right moment and put her back in control as he grasped Edith's hand, bowed his gorgeous dark head in polite acknowledgement of the sad occasion, and murmured conventional words of regret.